Hello devs, Sid the IT guy here, and let's discuss the third-party fulfillment service provider mechanism in Shopify. So after API version 2022.07, Shopify has introduced the fulfillment order mechanism where they have completely revamped the Shopify fulfillment flow. So now in this video, we will see what the changes are and how we can introduce the functionality in our app. So this video is chaptered and the chapters are in front of you, which is intro and video subject. Then the second chapter would be registering the app as a third-party fulfillment provider. The third would be creating products. Then we would place orders on those products, and then we will try to fulfill those orders and see how the mechanism works. So the video subject is about the third-party fulfillment provider. So let's start the video. And it starts at the migration where in the stores table, I have added three columns, one of which is a long text fulfillment service response. So fulfillment service response is the API response that Shopify will give us, and we will store it in our database. So if I open up the API documentation, we can see that this is the post request through which we can create a new fulfillment service. And this is the payload that we have to send, which is name, callback URL, and tracking support and all that. Now, the callback URL is a little tricky because Shopify tells you that you have to append three endpoints and you have to expose them to the outside world, and you would have to have them each of which will serve its own purpose. So fetch tracking numbers will be the one where you would return the tracking numbers for the order, and fetch stock will be for the stock, and fulfillment order notification is send fulfillment and cancellation request if the fulfillment service has opted in to receive this notification. So in the Laravel app, you would see in the stores table, we have added these three columns, two of which are tiny integer, one long text. And in store model, you will see this function has registered for fulfillment service. So if this column is equal to 1 or is exactly equal to true, then that means they have. So now let's move ahead. Yeah. So now the next thing is the installation controller. So basically the trigger point for this API point to be hit is right after you complete your installation. So in the installation controller, I hope that you have gone through the whole code. Right about where we finish the installation part, we call this function register for fulfillment service, which accepts a storedb object, which is up here, and it is an eloquent object returned back here in the storedb variable. And the definition for this function is right here. And as you can see that this is just calling the fulfillment service.json endpoint from Shopify, getting the headers, setting the body, just making the API call, and updating the fulfillment service response with whatever we have got. So in a later stage of the app, if you see some issue, then you can just check this column and you will know what kind of response you had received when you initially called it. And then we can check for status code. So status code is exactly equal to 201. Then we can update these two columns to true values, and that's it. And we are just logging after that what we have received. And we are not returning any kind of error messages here because this shouldn't hinder the installation part of the Shopify app installation. So moving on, let's log in into the app. So Shopify project.test, and I would go into my email 456. Yeah, let's go into products page, and then let's go into create product. Now you will see this change here. It says app fulfillment service. Now in installation controller, you will see this callback URL, which is route service callback. Oh, I'm sorry. The name is coming from configuration, which is custom.fulfillment service name. So if I open up custom.php and I search this, then here it is. Now notice that I did not keep it the same name as the app itself because the fulfillment service name I figured could be different from the main app name. So in our example, this is app fulfillment service. Feel free to change this if you wish to. And yeah, and in web.php, you would see this service callback route group where the initial is just the service callback function and 3 additional routes along with it, which adheres to the Shopify API documentation for fulfillment auto notification, fetch tracking numbers, and fetch stock. After that, in VerifyCsrfToken.php, I have added these routes. So these are exempt from the CSRF token validation. So these can be exposed to the real world. Now, I haven't written these function definitions, but I recommend you that you should write a request validation from Shopify, which is just an HMAC validation, and I have given the function for it in function tray.php. You can check that out. Okay. So in product controller, we have this locations function, get locations for store. So in this store, what we are doing here is matching the name for it. So this is an anonymous function we have introduced, and it just says that if the store has registered for fulfillment service, then you should only pick the one where the name matches the custom.fulfillment service name. Then only pick that, and that's it. And then we can call return locations arrow get. So as a byproduct of that, in the UI, now it says app fulfillment service. So we know that our inventory is only going to be affected in that fulfillment service. Yeah. So now let's create a product itself and let's see what it looks like on Laravel project2.myshopify.com. So product name, let's take it product 28 Jan, and inventory info at this location is, let's say, 40, and let's create. Yeah, so it says product created. Let me also explain you what I have done in publish product function. Yeah, so in publish product function, here we have the GraphQL payload that we are taking, and in this we are taking the variants GraphQL config, and in this function, which is right here, in the inventory management, we are just putting this condition that if store has registered for fulfillment service, then pass along this string, or otherwise Shopify. So basically we are telling that the fulfillment service will manage the inventory for this product, and obviously we are, because we have registered for it. And after this has completed, so let's go back. Here it is, product 28 Jan, and let's check it out on how it looks like here. So products, and I will click this, created, newest first. Yeah, here we go. So this is the product. There are no images, don't mind that. There is size L, there is that variant, and it says 40 available at one location. So now if you click that, then you will see that inventory will be stocked at app fulfillment service. This is just because of that one change that we made. And in settings, if you click the locations, then you will see your in-house locations up top. And if you scroll down, then you will see app locations as third-party fulfillment services that manage inventory and fulfills orders. So here's our fulfillment service. So this is how the products can be populated on your Shopify store. And now if you receive the orders on these products, let's say product 28 Jan, then only your app can fulfill this with the proper tracking info. Other apps like CJ Dropshipping, even if they have that information, they cannot do that because Shopify has introduced that kind of restriction. Okay, so let's place some orders and let's work on fulfilling these orders. Real quick, guys, I forgot to mention this permission in the API scopes, which is why the fulfillment wasn't working. So just make sure of that your API scopes contain all the permissions which is listed right here. Otherwise, the fulfillments won't work. Now let's continue. So in our app, we just created an imageless t-shirt, and here it is, the first one. And in our Shopify admin, here it is, the imageless t-shirt. So now let's place orders on it. So let's just make sure that it is 45 available at one location, and that one location is the app fulfillment service. Okay, fine. So in orders, image as t-shirt, let's click size L, add it, and customer, let's say any customer. some note, and we can just mark as paid. Create. Okay, here we go. So after that, let's go back to orders and let's click sync. Here it is, 1016. And now the change that you will notice is there's this button called request fulfillment. Therefore, we know that this is the one that is assigned to that application fulfillment service. So therefore, we have to use the new flow now. So in that, let's click fulfill items. Let's click fulfill. Oh yeah, and in the blade, I have also made some change. In show.blade, you will notice that this condition was not there before, but I have added it. So we are now looking for two values, which is manual and app fulfillment service. If it matches any one of these, then the fulfill button will be visible in the UI. And yeah, that's it. So let's say number is 12345, shipping company is delivery, custom message, any, yeah, and let's hit fulfill. So now it is loading, and now let's see what happens. So in the object that we have got, now we have received the status code as 200, this was 200, and the response is 201 as fulfillment created. So now let's go over how we did that. So this is the documentation that you have to follow. Shopify API, here it is. So I will provide the documentation in the description. Make sure to check that out. And while you are down there, consider hitting the subscribe button as it helps me be motivated and put out more videos like this. And here it is. So in this documentation, you can find all the steps that I have followed here. So it says create a fulfillment service, which is basically just an API endpoint of fulfillment services.json as we saw before. Then receive fulfillment requests and cancellations. So that is just the payloads for receiving it and acting on the fulfillment requested orders, which is here. We can retrieve like this. Then you can accept it, which is fulfillment orders slash ID slash fulfillment request slash accept JSON. And after that, you can just fulfill the order as usual, or you can reject it even, and you can create the fulfillment as usual, and that's it. You can act on cancellation request, and you can go over this documentation to understand it properly. Now let's see what in the code we have done. So in the previous implementation, now we have initialized this variable at the top, which is null initially, and in the else part here, if store has registered for fulfillment service, then send an accept response variable will have this function call back, and after that um, we just proceed as usual as we did before. So let's see this function, and in this function we are calling two more functions in it, which is the call fulfillment request endpoint and call accept request endpoint. And both of these functions are just simple API calls in which we are setting the endpoint as fulfillment orders slash fulfillment order arrow ID arrow fulfillment request.json store, then take the headers, then the payload is like this where you can put in your custom message. So I just write please fulfill ASAP because that is how we can indicate that we are requesting for a fulfillment, and then we return the response whatever it is from the API call. In the second API where we call the accept request endpoint, what we do is we just call the same endpoint as above, but this time instead of fulfillment request.json, we call fulfillment request slash accept.json as we saw in the documentation. And we get the headers, and the payload is like this where the fulfillment request is accepted the request on this state. So you have a record on Shopify's end, then return whatever the call is like that. Yeah. And after that, the payload is from the previous flow. The endpoint is fulfillment JSON. Let me delete this extra line. Yeah. So you can see this is the only if condition that has been added here, and at the end we send this in the response in this variable. So we can check on the front end what is the output of it. Okay, so if I just refresh now, and if I click fulfill items, now it says it's fulfilled. So this is the new Shopify updated flow that we have to follow. You have to, in the database, you have to take the fulfillment orders related to an order. So that's why I have a different table for it. And you have to sync it properly. You have to listen for the webhooks. You have to get the fulfillment orders for an order as it goes through updations. And yeah, this flow will get the job done. And hit the subscribe button if you liked it. I would appreciate that. And yeah, that's about it. Thank you.